All right. Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Welcome. Chair Harrington, over to you.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 Washington County Board of Commissioners work session. This is Chair Catherine Harrington, hello on the screen, along with Commissioners Pam Trees, Vice Chair Willie Nafisa Fai, and Commissioner Rogers is expected about 20 minutes late. He's let us know. So, welcome everyone, including our community members here with us today. We have a really interesting agenda today with a lot of different topics. So, first item on the agenda is board and leadership communication. Who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Fry.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Good morning. Good to see you, Mr. Feek. And, it's been a long time, but it's good to be in person and good to have you. Last week, I had the opportunity to speak Pacific University. Thank you to Adele Monteblanco for the invitation to speak to the environmental health course students. There were about, I think, 23 or 25 students doing public health. We talked about the county's responsibilities. There are a lot of people, young kids that actually didn't. A lot of the students didn't know what we do or what we're responsible or the lines between the state, the county, and cities. So it was really a good conversation to have with the students, and then a lot of questions about how my public health background influences my role as a Washington County Commissioner, and how we're trying to center or how we try to center public health in all policies. The discussion about tobacco ordinance came up, and that was a really good conversation to have. And then the importance of community involvement. They were really impressed the number of people that came to testify and to share their experience with the tobacco products and whatnot. So that was a really good. I mentioned that to say, even though people might not know the role and the responsibilities of the county, they are paying attention to our meetings, and at least when we are showing up in spaces, they look back to our meetings to prepare for themselves. So that was a really good learning for them to know a little bit about the county, and to also know that they went back and referenced our videos and prior meetings. We talked about how public health might have not been as attractive as it is before the pandemic. So how the idea of public health being boring before the pandemic came up, and that was a good conversation and a good way to appreciate the how appreciative we are to public health now because of the pandemic, as horrible as the pandemic was. I also last week did a tour of the Southwest Corridor. My computer's volume is on. Every time I get a notification, it makes a noise. I don't know if you were all hearing, but it's kind of driving. I did the tour of the Southwest Corridor. This tour included Metro counselors, members of the Metro Planning, our own members of Washington County Transportation Leadership, the Director of Transportation and Land Use was there, Stephen Roberts, myself, and Aaron Doyle. And then we had local mayors as well, and state and city leaders as well. So it was a really good conversation. And our team as Washington County, we are planning on debriefing. I'm looking at Stephen Roberts as he looks down on to debrief and to recenter that focus, that project, and figure out where we are, prior commitments we made to that project, and how we can be part of the conversation that about to restart that project. And I also had last week attended a gathering with Congresswoman Bonamici, that one of the board chair for the THPRD organized, and this was for new electeds. When I say new, meaning people who were elected in 2020, so after 2020, not necessarily new. Like I've stopped considering myself new. By the way, just
We've
Um,
broken you in.
yes, Chair Harrington, you
Like a
did.
good book.
So it was sort of like, what am I doing here? Wait a minute. But it was good to connect a lot of people who were elected after 2020 and what they're working on and the aspirations and the ambitions that everybody have for the community. That was really good to all the stuff that are from school board to cities to auditor office. And that was a good conversation to be part. This week it's super busy. So I'll report back next week. I also did listen in our AOC Legislative Committee. Thank you
Great.
to both of you who were in the room. You were all participants. I heard your comments, Sharon. So, I look forward to hearing from your take on. And then I had a question. Perhaps I could ask this offline, but I realized I wasn't a voting member of the legislative committee. I know a while back they counted me as a voting member, but then yesterday, no. So I wasn't sure. So that was a good thing to realize that perhaps there was some kind of a discrepancy in the.
I don't know if you were attending a meeting as an alternate for the county position, if it was a meeting
Maybe.
that I couldn't be at.
Maybe, okay, maybe that's where, yeah, yesterday. Yeah, I just noticed that my vote then was counted and then yesterday then, so.
Right.
uh,
So at steering committee members, hello, Commissioner Rogers. At AOC steering committee members, every commissioner in attendance has a vote. Then there's a structure for the legislative committee and then a slightly different structure for voting at the board of directors.
Okay. I will stop right there and report back my activities for next week. There's a lot happening for transportation. The TV Highway Steering Committee is scheduled this week. And the Local Government Advisory Committee is also happening. And so I'll stop right there. Welcome, Commissioner Rogers.
Who would like to go next?
Mine's going to be short because a lot of internal meetings last week, so I don't have much to report from an external standpoint. Yeah, so I guess I'll just stop with that. It was nice. Thank you, Aaron Doyle, for meeting with me last week and taking some time out of your schedule to do that. So thanks for that. Also, just an update, with Nafisa on the TV highway study, just a variety of things. This week's kind of the same thing. We, of course, have the Gathering of Hope event at noon today. So I'm hoping that we all go over to the City of Hillsborough Plaza over there. I guess officially Mayor Tom Hughes Plaza or something. Yeah, Romac, bunch of other stuff this week. So yeah, I'll report on that. Next week, we do have the 53rd Avenue Community Park groundbreaking this week. And so that's a pretty exciting thing. So I'll give you an update on that next week. That's all I got.
I can go next. Good morning. I have some sad news to pass along. And sorry if I get a little upset here. Many of you know and have worked with Frank Angelo over the years. And this past weekend, Frank had a heart attack and passed away in Santa Fe.
Mm-hmm.
So I've talked to several of you about this, but Frank ran the transportation committee for Westside Economic Alliance for some 25 plus years. I mean, it was a very long time and has been a real key component to so many of the transportation decisions and plans that have been put in place over the years for this region. So he retired in this last summer. Stephen, Chris, and I were at his retirement party, and So it was a real shock. I got a call from Mimi Dukas last night. So just wanted to pass on that very sad news.
Do they know when these services can be?
I haven't heard anything yet. I think
Maybe let's-
I will absolutely let you know. I attended, as Commissioner Fry mentioned, the AOC Legislative Committee and Board meeting along with the chair yesterday. And there's a couple things I want to note, and I'll defer to you for detail. But one point of focus was the budget. And I just want to let you all know that the chair has been deeply involved in looking at the formula that's relative to the larger counties, and it is representing us well. So I think that discussion is on the table, and it's important to note that it's a very complex situation whereas all the counties are charged base rate, then there's a formula for, and this is just the main budget, or the budget, not the road fund budget. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, but we are represented well by her detail management there. So thank you. The other thing that I wanted to mention about AOC, before I go any further at the Ledge Committee, I want to reach out and thank Erin Doyle and her group for the really good work that we got, that let us know what positions we're comfortable with in relationship to the legislative agenda. So thank you for that work. It really made sitting through that meeting and understanding things a lot clearer. So thank you very much. The other piece that you should know is that we went through the changes to the bylaws, and I guess what's important to note is that the budget proposal, and there was a proposal for an increase of 7.5 to the base amount. The budget proposals and the changes to the bylaws are now going to be voted on at the general meeting in November. So, I would really encourage you to, I know Commissioner Willie is going to be on vacation, but is going to try to attend that. I think it's important for us to make sure that we have a presence there, that we're voting, and that we work to make AOC an organization that we work effectively with. So that's my message here. Last night I attended the CPO 7 meeting. The big issue really was noise and construction kind of issues that follow. And I think that Melissa DeLizer did a good job. She was calling in from Wisconsin. She really did a good job in managing that discussion.
Was she on vacation or just working?
She's
Okay, that's fine.
she's
just
dealing
hope
with her
that we're-
father, who's
We're not putting the pressure on employees to work during vacation, that's all.
and Melissa and I were communicating through Teams as she was there.
Yeah.
And she did a great job. So this week, last week I also met with Cale Wambacher, and I talked with him about the plans for the Hillsborough Hop Stadium and their funding issues, and it looks like their approach is going to go to the state as well as outside funding. So it's really very exciting what they're doing for our community as a whole. This week is a busy week. There's a lot of community events. I'm attending the Gathering of Hope today. There's a Cedar Mill Nature Park celebration, and that's in honor of Clean Water Services completion of the 2-year Cedar Mill Interceptor project. So I'll be there, Diane. And Central Cultural has the Economic Symposium on Wednesday. There, I have the Impact Coordinating Committee meeting. I'm meeting with our auditor-elect, and I have several other meetings that are on the docket. So my calendar's open. Take a look if it really is a slow night for you.
How about you, Commissioner Rogers?
Yeah, I'm not apt to look at your calendar. I'm sure it sounds very full. And thank you for telling us about Frank. Yeah, he was a titan. Yeah, I knew him a long time.
I
All
know
these
you do.
people are Bob Stacy, others, it's just, I guess that time of life, but very, very, very sad. Like probably many of you, we all listened to the governor debate last night. It was an interesting debate. I wish that the third candidate had been there. And my only comment is it sure points out to me resoundingly that there's a statewide perspective that's a little different than maybe the local perspective. And the local perspective is that we indeed gain share in other kinds of tools to be able to facilitate the kind of growth that they'd like to see. So it's not, as I think Betsy Johnson pointed out, it's not $1 million from the governor. That's, I don't want to say chicken feed for all of us. That's a lot of money, but that's just from a big enterprise like that. But we need to have some sort of understanding that local government plays a role in that economic development process. I've always firmly believed that it's a partnership. It's not state saying something, or local saying something. So anyway, I found it interesting. I think both candidates did a good job of presenting themselves. But that was my takeaway. I'm working countless hours right now, like at 9, 10 o'clock at night. So I'll just keep on doing that, and my week will soon be over, and then I'll be back to normal. So that's my report.
Happy tax season, as they
No,
say. You're
yeah.
making your clients happy.
I don't know about that, the long hours, but
Well, you're at least making sure you get their paperwork done for them.
right, thank you.
All righty, I'll go. So last week I had a meeting with the Regional Arts and Cultural Coalition management team, and I learned some new information. Apparently, there is an IGA that's about 20 years old, and per that IGA, the county has positions, plural, on their board of directors.
The county has, would you say that one more time?
Positions on.
The county, Washington County, has positions on their board of directors.
Oh.
So,
And they're unfilled right now?
yep. So Daniel's following up with them to see what the paperwork foundation is. And so when we get that, we'll be sharing it. So
That wasn't even on our radar, was it, from when we make?
not when, it wasn't on our radar when we tried to come up to speed on this space back in the pre-pandemic days in 2019.
Hmm.
Part of our ramp up. Remember that year fondly?
But we
So
did
you'll see.
do a lot of work with them on funding issues. I'm surprised it was never put forward. Thank you.
Yep, stay tuned. So Friday was the AOC Public Safety Steering Committee, and all the steering committees have, since the August, September, early October meetings, have been finishing up their slate for legislative principles and priorities. And they were really urged to identify 1 or 2 priorities for this next long session. So did that on Friday with the Public Safety Steering Committee, and then those slates advanced to the Legislative Committee meeting yesterday, and then to the Board of Directors yesterday. We, at the Legislative Committee, we learned, we got a report out on the learnings from all the various district meetings in the month of September, and across all of the steering committees as well. There are similar hot topics: housing, land use, homelessness, Measure 110 implementation and improvements, aid and assist, forest lands and wildfire, water, and place-based decision-making. For the pre-session filings of potential bills, there were 3,400 filings, 3,400, 4 of which are submissions from AOC. A 2.5% lottery dedication to county economic development, reintroducing the concept of counties being able to charge utility fees for right-of-way. Then another one regarding transportation and the surface transportation fund. And then general fund backfill with measure 110 to the tune of $70 million total. And the next, all of those were submitted to, what's it called? The Legislative Council. Thank you. And for concept draft. So those concept drafts there's a deadline of December 5th in advance of the December 7th through 9th legislative days. So here I sit thinking, fooled by the weather, that it's still September. It's not a prolonged September. It's really October, the middle of October, Catherine, and December will be here before I like it to be. So
It's interesting about franchise fees, county being able to collect that franchise fee. That hasn't, I don't think that's surfaced for several years, has it? So now it's coming back.
I don't remember
They've
which,
been trying to get that for quite, I mean,
which
is that a
session?
reoccurring thing or?
It's been a reoccurring thing. Yeah, the trade-off obviously is that we can have people move things out of the right of way. So if they're getting franchise fees, then they're gonna ask us to move their utilities when we widen. That's the big trade-off.
so as you know, cities are able to charge, and this came up via Aaron at the legislature a couple of years ago, but it continues to be an issue across the state. So,
Yeah.
then Commissioner Treese did a marvelous job of encapsulating the focus of the Board of Directors meeting. I forwarded to you my latest analysis of our dues payment. So there's a little bit of a story here. Earlier in the year, they were working on a budget proposal that involved a budget increase of 14% for full cost coverage. And that meant, I keep thinking at 22%, but it's a 20 point something percent dues increase for us. But the numbers were not 100% fleshed out from the dues standpoint. So fast forward to the District 8 meeting, and the packet that we had included a dues page. And I did some quick calculations right at that meeting and spoke up at the District 8 meeting. But I was able to finish my analysis in advance of yesterday's meetings. And with the 5% budget proposal, the impact to us is a 15% dues increase.
That doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah,
And that's because of that extra formula.
right. And the tiered formula that you referred
Yes.
to, you're right.
Yeah. So I sent you, now keep in mind, the only thing any of us have to work from is a PDF file. So I'm whipping out my pencil with my erasers and my calculator. And so everything on the sheet that I sent you is done that way. While I prefer to do it in Excel, it's a little bit more rudimentary. So I did not fully understand the underlying issue that I had back in the spring. I just felt something didn't seem right to me. Well, this analysis helped me understand that I am bothered by the construct. And fundamentally, the construct, this is only the second year of the construct, right? We were talking about it at the board retreat in August of 19, how we needed a fairer construct. it took through 2020 to put it in place. 2021 was the first year of that dues construct. And this year, November, or the next year of dues is only the second year. I wish I'd had more bandwidth back in 2020 to fully understand the dues construct. But at the same time, they've also worked the AOC numbers so that they're real numbers versus estimates that they're basing all this on. So what I've learned is that 26 counties of the now 35 dues paying have a population of lower than 50,000. And they constitute 74% of the counties. There are then 5 of us who have a population greater than 200K, and we comprise 14% of the counties. But there are 9 counties that are paying more than $50,000 of dues, which means 9 counties are carrying 59% of the budget. And 26%, the 26 of them are contributing 38% of the budget. So I'm just pointing out the significant imbalance of the construct, and particularly that there may need to be a little bit more normalization there. And our increase last year was 6%. Our increase per this is 15.4%. And that's with the 5% budget. So the action yesterday was to draw up a 7.5% budget and bring that to the November meeting. So, but I will be working, AOC has hired a consultant to look at the construct. And so a meeting is now set up between he and I to go through the analysis, because they just haven't analyzed it that way before. And I fundamentally agree why we put an improved construct in place. So it was clear and transparent. But I think there are just some slightly different imbalances. That's all. So
One thing that I would add to that, Chair, is that Sushila Jayapal, Commissioner from Multnomah County, also brought forward the idea that we need to be looking at the overall picture from the standpoint of revenue, expenses, and what cuts could be made as well. Yeah, that I just want to make sure you understand that was part of the discussion.
yeah. So one of the thoughts that I've heard from our smaller counties is that what they've been looking for out of the construct is a predictable dues structure. And I applaud that, but going from 6% to north of 15% from one year to the next isn't exactly predictable for the larger counties either. So that's something to examine in the construct, and these constructs are never easy. So stay tuned. I'll keep working on that. This Thursday, well, let me back up. As Diane has reported previously, Clean Water Services has been participating in a industry engagement with the State Department and the U.S. Water Partnerships, U.S. ASEAN Water Smart Engagements Program. So this week, 2 leaders from, or just last week, 2 leaders from Clean Water Services met with a delegation in Vientiane, Laos, while at WEFTEC. And that delegation is coming up here to Oregon. Well, it's Tuesday now, they may be here already. And so they're not only meeting with the CWS team here on site. They're also touring the area locally. And there will be a luncheon on Thursday where I'll be representing the board to the delegation. There is a potential for a trip there in the future for someone from the board, and Diane and Mark will be talking with each of you to see if you're interested in that. I'm happy to go if no one else is ready, able, or willing, because it involves a lot of shots and things like that. But given that I just had the opportunity of going to the World Water Congress, I wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity of that trip as well. So then the other thing I have this week is the second meeting of the Tri-County Planning Body, TCBP, for the Supportive Housing Services. And the agenda doesn't have anything earth-shattering. It's really the committee still trying to embrace what its role is compared to the SHS Oversight Committee and getting to the regional responsibility. So those are the biggest things I think on my agenda this week. So that's it from me. Leadership communication.
Great. Good morning, Board of Commissioners. So I do want to just pick up the thread and appreciate Melissa DeLizer calling in from Wisconsin. I think that is something that we need to embrace as a great learning through COVID, that we have the ability to work from many places. And so what does that mean to Washington County and the well-being of our employees? Yes, Chair, we want our employees to take vacation. And we also have employees with a whole lot of different life situations. So to be able to work remotely and call in is something that we're trying to encourage here as, I'll say, our culture moving forward. And one of actually the silver linings of COVID, because we wouldn't have had the opportunity to invest in the technology that we have now to make that occur, and frankly, practice it as we were all home for a very long period of time. Commissioner Treese, I will also be at the Central Cultural Symposium. They have asked me to serve on a panel and talk about the county's economic development work under your board's leadership and guidance. So not only our economic development action plan, but our ARPA work that we've been executing on. Quick tax update, Commissioner Roger. It is that time of year, but I want to speak about that from the assessment and taxation standpoint. Staff reported that values were certified on October 3rd, and statements will be mailed on Monday, October 17th. I'm pleased to report across all classifications, values have risen for a total real market value increase of 18%. As a result, assessed values, called AB, increased 5.3% and levied taxes increased 5.8%. We don't have the strategic investment estimates at this values at this time, but that will be coming soon, and I will report that out to your board. Although this is great news and really signals the strong economy we have here in Washington County, there is cause for concern as we determine the budget context for those property tax revenue numbers. As the board is aware, there are serious long-term financial constraints that our county is facing, both across our revenue and expenditure sides of our ledger. Our CFO, Greg Munn, will be updating the revenue forecast based on these updated values, and this information will be coming to your board in the economic update that Greg is currently working on. So sharing good news and congratulations to our Health and Human Services Behavioral Health team. The Behavioral Health Program just completed the exit interview with Oregon Health Authority for our 3-year certification of approval renewal to operate the Community Mental Health Program. The review resulted in 0 findings, which is a great thing. OHA highlighted the work behavioral health is doing in partnership with the community and the sense of collaboration with our community. It went even better than expected, and it's really a statement on the incredible work that the team is doing during some really challenging times, and they're doing it together with our community. So that's great news to share. I also want to share a recent publication from Dr. Rep and her contributions. And the Tri-Counties issued a press release on Wednesday, October 5th, about a study conducted by our epidemiologists that was published in the Journal of Public Health Management and Practice. The study found that transgender and non-binary people are often misgendered on their death certificates. This happens for several reasons, including most coroner medical examiner case management software does not include a field for gender identity. There is no national requirement for death investigators to undergo training on how and why to capture that information about the descendant's gender identity. And next of kin who may not support the person's gender identity have the power to declare the descendant's sex on the death certificate, a process which is a formal process. The epidemiologists who published the paper, including our chief epidemiologist, Dr. Kim Rep, are calling for a legal and policy changes to rectify this problem. Dr. Rep recently mentioned what we learn will likely alarm anyone who identifies as transgender or non-binary, or anyone who cares about the rights of transgender or gender non-conforming people. When a population is not counted, it is erased. By the way, Marnie Kyle, our assistant county administrator, does serve on this editorial board of prestigious peer review journal, and of course doesn't review any of the publications submitted by Washington County staff. So I do want to lift up the good work of our chief epidemiologist and also highlight this was done in a tri-county collaborative manner.
Quick question on that. If the policy level needs to change to enable the implementation to follow, is that if it's at a policy level where we can and should weigh in for state level change or federal change? I'm assuming that the department will work with our GR team and bring that forward so that we can exercise our voice, whether it's through a legislative agenda or letters or requests, what have you.
Yeah, Ms. Kyle and Ms. Doyle will be connecting on this, and we'll bring needed steps where we would be asking for the board support.
Great, thank you.
World Homeless Day. Yesterday, October 10th, was World Homelessness Day. The purpose of World Homeless Day is to draw attention to the needs of people in communities across the world who experience homelessness. As a Built for Zero community in partnership with Community Solutions since 2019, we have worked to build shared understanding of homelessness as a solvable community problem. I do want to just highlight this important day to the work to your board, as it does also underscore the importance work that we have going across the county, not only in our housing department through our affordable housing program, but also our SHS program in coordination with many departments and many community partners. And that concludes my weekly update.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Carr.
Good morning, Chair Harrington. I will be very brief. In the Schwartz against Washington County case, which is a challenge to the county's tobacco ordinance, you know, the judge struck down the ordinance and joined our enforcement. We are going to be recommending appeal of that formally at next week's meeting. It will be on the consent agenda, seeking the commission's approval so that we can file an appeal in that case. In a related case, the No on 2878 case, which is the federal case, I will be arguing that this afternoon at 2 o'clock before Judge Emmergut. So I'm going to leave here at 1:30 to go upstairs. It'll be a remote argument. Courtney Duke Dreesen will come in case you have any legal questions for the end of the meeting this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you for you and your team for representing us well.
Thank you.
Ms. Taniguchi Dennis, Clean Water Services.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and good morning, Board of Clean Water Services. So just a couple of items. On the risk management front, the team is monitoring the chemical supply chain because portions of it is dependent upon rail service. And in light of the new increased labor tensions with rail, we're closely monitoring it. The team is also prepared to respond to the DEQ air quality advisory that it's due to intermittent smoke impacts that is expected to last until Friday. So currently the air quality is good in our region, and our triggers begin when the air quality index is at or above 101. It's also October brings our fall leaf pickup time. So our very first event is being planned for October 29th at Aloha High School, Meadow Park Middle School, and Oak Hills Elementary. So we're kicking off the new season. There's 6 events planned. And we collect about 2,400 cubic yards or 240 dump truck loads of leaves every year. And we cycle them at West Union Gardens to be made into mulch. But it's again that sign that fall is upon us. And that's all I have to report today.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for mentioning the air quality advisory. It is a good reminder to hear from you and Ms. Angie about the number of personnel that we have who work outdoors on a regular basis, whether it's members of our LUT team doing inspections, supervision for various land use projects, for planning, the CWS field ops team keeping things in operation. So I hope everyone will be safe out there.
And if I can just add to that, with our changing weather conditions and climate change, we have updated our inclement weather policy because when the wildfires occurred in 2020, our inclement weather policy did not point to that type of condition. It was really focused on snow and ice. So we have updated the policy to give our staff and our teams more guidance. And safety is paramount for employees, and weather does have an impact on their safety.
Yeah, particularly anyone who lives just with asthma, right? Ooh, be careful out there, folks. You only get one life. All righty. I think that's it for leadership communication this morning. So that means we're just a few minutes ahead of schedule and ready to go into a next topic, which relates to air quality, in fact. So I'd like to turn it over to the team from the Office of Community Development on the Wood Stove Exchange Program update. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you here this morning. My name is Shannon Wilson, and I'm the Program Manager with the Office of Community Development. And I'm joined here with Tim Davis, who is a Housing Rehabilitation Specialist in our office. And also, I believe joining us remotely is Kathleen Johnson. She's a Senior Program Coordinator with the Department of Health and Human Services. And so she'll be available to assist with question and answer after the presentation. So the Wood Stove Exchange Program, it began in 2016. Oh, and there's Kathleen, great. So the Wood Stove Exchange Program began in 2016, thanks to support from your board. Oh, I'm just doing a little.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thanks to support from your board, as well as support from other local jurisdictions and local businesses as well. And so since that time, the program has been successful, both in terms of improving the indoor air quality for those households who benefited from a wood stove exchange, so for a cleaner heating source in their home, and then has also had a larger community benefit. So improving or helping to improve the outdoor air quality in our community. So with that, I just want to thank you again for your time, and then we'll then pass it over to Tim for the presentation.
Thank you, commissioners. Everyone, thank you for being here. Thank you for the introduction. We're done here based on the introduction. Go ahead. So I just want to, the agenda for today, we're going to go pretty quickly, a lot of information.
Is it on?
Sorry about, oh, no, there we go. Thank you.
So here's the agenda for this presentation. We'll review and present on the program that's been successful through department collaboration with funders and partners. We'll give you a little history. Current program numbers and emissions reductions, the health effects of wood smoke particulate, the extent of the old stove use as primary heat source realized from over 800 assessments so far in the program of residence stoves and homes. The upcoming change in the air quality standard, the target for outdoor air quality as measured by particulates is being reduced. The economics of not meeting the new standard, also called non-attainment. Current funds and what's needed to extend the program, leveraging continued community support, getting the most out of the awareness and the program is built up and take advantage of the momentum. And the benefits of possibly extending the program, staying in compliance with the upcoming lower air quality standard and continuing to improve outdoor and indoor air quality and the associated health issues residents of Washington County might have. Next slide. So this is just a couple paragraphs of the first media release. In 2014, the Oregon DEQ surveyed the Portland metro area and determined that a major source of particulate matter, PM 2.5 and PM 10, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. Pollution in Washington County was from older and uncertified stoves. Old and uncertified wood stoves produce an excessive amount of wood smoke, which negatively affects air quality, the local environment, and residents' health. Wood stove changeout programs have proven to be an effective approach in reducing particulate matter pollution, especially in winter months. In the development of the wood stove exchange program, the DEQ assumed the level of PM 2.5 at the Harefield monitor was 31.3 micrograms per cubic meter, the 3-year average from 2011 to 2013. That number was rising close to the attainment level of 35 micrograms per cubic meter in 2014. The PM 2.5 standard is one portion of the National Ambient Air Quality Standard, or NAAQS. In 2016, Washington County Department of Health and Human Services and the Office of Community Development partnered to develop the Washington County Wood Stove Exchange Program to provide grants and rebates to households that changed to a cleaner heating source. The program's goals were to serve 700 households, reduce wintertime occurrences of exceeding the national particulate matter standard, and reduce the annual average particulate matter concentrations. Next. So here's where we are now. Over 46 tons of wood smoke particulate prevented, 269 tons of other pollutants and gases, over 2,000 tons of carbon dioxide have been prevented. We have funds in place for about 100 to 110 exchanges this year. The number of exchanges depends on the amount of the grants and the rebates paid out from here on out. 3 additional years of funding from partners at $375,000 to $400,000 per year, like previous funding from Intel and Hillsborough, would fund about 100 exchanges per year and would get the wood stove exchange close to 1,000 wood stove exchanges. Additional funding from cities, Energy Trust, and others could get that program over 1,000. The Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, estimates there are 14,000 uncertified wood stoves in Washington County. So what is PM 2.5? It's the size of particles is directly linked to the potential for causing health problems. Small particles less than 10 micrometers in diameter pose the greatest problem because they can get deep into your lungs, and some particles as small as PM 2.5 may even get into your lungs, into your bloodstream, I'm sorry. Exposure to such particles can affect both your lungs and your heart. Numerous scientific studies have linked particle pollution exposure to a variety of problems, including premature death in people with heart or lung disease, non-fatal heart attacks, irregular heartbeat, aggravated asthma, decreased lung function, increased respiratory symptoms. Next slide. So the Wood Stove Exchange Program was developed with the information from the DEQ Wood Smoke Survey from 2014. A little over 1,000 people were surveyed. About 294 were wood burning households, but only 82 of those were burning old uncertified stoves. And out of those 82, 14% were determined to use their stove as primary heat. The Wood Stove Exchange Program has data from over 825 participants participant homes with old and uncertified stoves. We ask multiple questions in each household assessment about wood burning practices and the amount of wood used. We've determined that over 2/3 of households assessed are using the old wood stove as primary source of heat compared to 17% from the DEQ survey. We could conclude that the impact in winter of particulate from wood stoves is much larger than previously thought. The pie is much larger, we can possibly take a larger slice. Or looking at it from a different standpoint, when the development of the program estimated 700 exchanges might reach the 2 PM 2.5 emissions goal, the information culled from these assessments in the program participant households show we may have prevented only about a quarter of the emission reduction originally assumed as needed to stay within attainment of the standard. Expanding the program now builds on efforts to date and engaging people where they are, where they live, brings trust to the program, motivates folks to exchange their old stove. Also, newer stoves manufactured since May 2020 are cleaner than previous new stoves, reducing emissions even further. If we extend to 1,000 exchanges, we could mean that half of the new wood stoves installed in the wood stove exchange program would be from these even newer, lower emissions stoves.
Can you go back?
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid I'm a little puzzled. Extending the program would increase the number of old stoves. Don't you mean it would increase the number of known old stoves? Why would we invest in a program that would keep older stoves going?
No, that's not what we're saying. We're
That's-
saying another 300 exchanges beyond the goal of 700.
Okay,
So exchanging those out. So, sorry.
so it would increase the number of old stoves exchanged.
Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is a map of participant households so far. The lavender color is unincorporated Washington County, and the other colors represent the cities that the stoves were exchanged in. Next slide. This is the same map, but basically this is showing the red dots are the primary heat households versus the secondary heat households. So you can see that primary heat is not exclusive to rural areas, people that might be electric only. It's still in the heavily populated areas. And then here is primary heat by income. So these are the 4 categories that we have grants and 3 categories of rebates. You can see on the left side, the grant is for households that are below 80% of the median family income, and how significant the use of the stove is for primary heat in these households. Next slide. So this is a program that supports health equity within our community, as it does prioritize low-income households, and it reduces the air pollution exposure for those households. This is just digging down a little bit further, taking that left column from the previous slide down to other low-income categories. Most of the people that are using their stove for primary heat are getting their wood for free, more than 2/3. They get it from Craigslist, friends, tree services, many sources, their own land. And then there's a small percentage of folks that get 2 cords of wood or so from the $20 Forest Service permit. So literally 75% of the people in this program are getting their wood for $20 or for free for each season. Next. So I'll try to cut this short. This slide shows the ambient air quality standards over 10 seasons. You can see in the slide that says 20, or the column that says 25 to 35 micrograms per cubic meter. Those are the daily exceedances, or the number of days we exceeded the standard at the Harefield monitor. The column on the right is the current standard. There is possibly some evidence here that since there's only 3 exceedances since 2014, 2015, when the county started the wood stove exchange program and other education on wood smoke and air quality, we've only had those 3 exceedances. Consequently, if you go to the same 6 years since 2015, 2016, we would be 26 times exceeding the new standard that's coming up in spring of 2023. So this is the EPA exact definition of non-attainment. So if you are in non-attainment of the air quality standard, there are sanctions that are put in place by the US EPA and the Oregon DEQ. And then the image there is from Brighton Lane up on Bald Peak in March 2017 during an extensive inversion event like we're having right now. That is all smoke. That was not a moist, foggy morning. So stay there.
Can I,
So, yeah, go ahead.
so there are stoves, but I'm noticing more and more commercial outdoor barbecues. And there don't seem to be any standards for those, but boy, do they billow smoke. And I don't know if they're burning wood, charcoal, or gas, right? And then there are also restaurants that have pizza ovens that I see getting deliveries of like oak. In a restaurant sort of venue, is their restaurant certification requires them to have proper filtration? So those are just some of the questions that I have around wood smoke beyond wood stoves. Oh, Marnie's circling here too. So it's just trying to understand the air landscape, so to speak.
Well, and Tim can speak better.
To grab the mic.
For the record, I'm Marnie Kyle, one of the assistant county administrators. And Tim can speak better to the contribution of some of these different sources of PM 2.5. But the specific question around restaurants and street vendors that are using barbecues and wood, our environmental health restaurant regulations don't prevent that. So they allow that right now. So there's no findings or nothing that we can say to not do that. So I don't think it's a huge contributor, but Tim could maybe look into that more. But it would require your board adopting, I'm sure some type of additional ordinance in addition to the state restaurant
Well, it
requirements.
I've just been observing these, but learning about the previous slide about the new standard coming in spring of 2023. That may be an area where we need to have some further investigation for consideration.
I forgot Kathleen was online and she actually works for the environmental
Oh.
health program. So sorry, Kathleen.
Thank you. We're
I just-
figuring out
sorry.
this hybrid stuff. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. For the record, Kathleen Johnson, I'm Senior Program Coordinator for our Environmental Health Program within the Public Health Division. And Marnie's totally correct in that our food pool lodging licensing program, that the infrastructure around wood burning and ventilation, at least in that way, is out of the purview of our inspections. And it is an issue that's come up very, very rarely, I will say, but we have gotten a couple calls here and there over the years around wood burning in restaurants for food cooking purposes. And through kind of digging into that, that is it kind of lives within the building code and how the restaurants are built and set up. And so I just wanted to note that as an exploratory area. I know we can also follow up with the specifics around what our licensing and inspection program does cover as far as ventilation goes for cooking, but I do know that at least with the kind of filtration and pollution control systems related to that, that's lives more within building code. But happy to follow up and get that more specific information to Marnie if that's of interest to you.
Well, I'll just say that it was interesting that I was driving home from our meeting in Salem yesterday and came across a food truck with one of these very large commercial scale wood-fired barbecue things. At the same time that I was hearing on the radio, the DEQ warnings about our poor air quality advisory through Friday. And I thought, I'll have to remember to inquire about this on Tuesday. So thank you for helping me learn more. Didn't mean to stall the presentation, but now I understand. It's like, ooh, we've got some new standards coming along.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So there are two types of sanctions in areas of non-attainment. One is new major emission sources, the construction sanctions on those, and funding sanctions for federal programs and facilities. This means increased cost of more emissions controls and longer permitting periods to review proposed controls, and including state implementation plans. I looked for a study as to what non-attainment might cost, and I found a study of the San Antonio area and suburbs, which is about 2.5 million people, which is very similar to the Portland area in population. And they estimated over 700 million in costs due to non-attainment. And that was directly related to just emissions controls and permitting. When they went beyond that into economic impacts, it went into the billions. So this is very important as what's happening in spring of 2023.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Tying it to sanctions and uncertified, is there any, did they get fined? Those who have uncertified wood stoves?
No, there's no fines. Some areas of the country have done that. Washington County does not. I don't know of any areas in Oregon that are doing that either. They're all doing some type of wood stove exchange or education. Again, it depends on funding for them. So Oak Ridge, Lakeview, Klamath Falls, Pendleton have been in non-attainment in the past decade or so. Next slide. So this is just something we've been tracking as a program. There's some milestones in what the county has done with air quality, including the program and some of the aspects of what Kathleen is doing. The gray line represents basically heating degree days or the average wintertime temperature. You can see by the trend line, it stays, pretty much the same every year, some variation. But since the county programs of education on slash burning, the ordinance on burn ban, and the wood stove exchange program, we have seen a reduction in wintertime particulate. This is particulate between November and February. Slide on our current funding. We will expend our gain share and administrative funding at the end of this fiscal year. We do have some funding from Intel and Hillsborough towards grants and rebates that could extend beyond this year. Next slide. And then just a representation of the number of stoves we've exchanged during the years. The short year of 14, there was when we suspended the program during the worst part of the pandemic. We went 13 months, and those 14 were really just projects that we finished that were already in progress. Next slide. Again, just another slide on the current balance. We have funds on hand. We are receiving some additional funding from Intel. We just don't have it on hand yet. And then one more, very similar, with recent funding from Intel, paid out to only grants and rebates, the funding on hand from Hillsborough. We can reach 700 and go a little beyond for exchanges. Admin funds do not, we don't use admin funds to pay for grants and rebates. That's from funding from these outside sources. We also leverage as much as we can federal tax incentives, energy trust, and Forest Grove Light and Power utility rebates as well for electric and gas devices. We want to just build on the awareness and momentum we have. During that year where we were suspended, we created the Old Stove Turn-In event. We had a little bit of extra time on our hands. And the idea was, at that point, it was basically a contactless event. People could drop off their stove. This is May of 2021. We would pay them a slightly lower than what's out there on the market of what people are trying to sell their old stoves for on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and elsewhere. It is illegal to sell an old uncertified stove in Oregon, even swap it or give it away. So we see these consistently out there on the online. So we put this program together, and it's been very successful. And then the people who contact us and say, well, I want to exchange my old stove for a new device, we just switch them over to the wood stove exchange program. During that suspension of 13 months, we had 62 applications we received, and I did one presentation in 13 months. So there's a lot of word of mouth out there, a lot of great awareness. We've done some recent Facebook and Nextdoor posts. We did a recent Horizons post. We're thinking about an upcoming postcard and other outreach events. Our partners are fantastic. The cities, other agencies, fire departments, sustainability departments. They're on the annual report, who helps us out every year. The new federal tax credits, now 30%, starting January 1st for wood and pellet stoves, should motivate some people on the rebate side that are maybe waffling to exchange their stove for a cleaner device. Utility rebates for electric and gas devices have been very important. And then we also provide info over the last couple of years now on strategies for managing air quality in the home during wildfire events, taking off of what Kathleen has put together. Lastly, so we believe there's a lot more wood stoves out there being used as primary heat in our community, using much more smoke, particulate and harmful pollutants and gases than we previously considered. There's significant value in continuing the program to reduce the PM 2.5 levels and remain in attainment of the upcoming lower clean air regulations. I'm involved in a couple of residential wood smoke groups, including the EPA group, regional and national. And they did a preliminary vote this summer for what the idea is next spring to get an idea of where they want to move the standard. The standard now is 35 micrograms per cubic meter. The vote was significantly to move it to 25. So in 2014, we were already over that at 31.3, as I mentioned earlier. So it's great for community health, but we're going to have more work in our hands to stay below that for attainment in this area. Any questions?
Commissioners?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I really like this program. You know, it was initiated when I was mayor, and certainly glad that City of Hillsborough participated in that. I know the neighborhood where the focus was and the monitoring was. I'd like to go to slide 11. So this is where we're talking about the new standards are on the left, and in the left column, or there's whatever the 25 to 35. And so it seems like we're right on the bubble. Like you said, we're at 31. So what things are we going to do to get our levels below 25? And what happens if we don't? Because there was a pretty big stick was going to be used on us if we didn't get it below 35 way back when it was first started. So what are we going to do to get it down to this level?
Well, I think we're already doing quite a few things. Kathleen can probably tell you about some of the things we're doing, you know, the burn ban ordinance, the wood stove exchange program. I know she's working on cleaner fuels, especially for construction and off-road. Maybe she can mention a little more what they're doing.
Sure. So as Tim mentioned, and I was not here, so Marnie can shout and correct me if I'm wrong, but in about 2014, when Marnie was with the Public Health Division, and she and my supervisor, John Kawaguchi, worked with the board to pass the air quality ordinance that we have in Washington County, and sister ordinances were passed in the city of Hillsborough, as well as the city of Cornelius. And so that ordinance is based on the current standard during the months of November through March. If air quality levels are forecasted to be close to or go beyond that 35 standard we call a red day. And that means that we are asking or really prohibiting folks, unless it's their only source of heat within their home, to not use a wood burning heating device on those days. We also have a yellow day threshold within that ordinance, and that's about when air quality or air pollution levels for PM 2.5 are forecasted to be close to or reach 30 micrograms per cubic meters. And on those days, we ask and issue a yellow day alert that if you don't need to, please, consider not burning. And so it's not a prohibition, but we kindly ask you because our air quality is not great. So consider your neighbors and not burn wood. And as Tim mentioned, and I think as most of you were on the board for, we also passed in 2019, well, not passed, I should say, adopted into the sustainable procurement policies, clean air construction standards for Washington County funded projects that require and phase in clean diesel construction equipment on construction sites. And so by year, I believe 2024, unless exempted or retrofitted, only the cleanest diesel equipment is allowed on county construction sites. That was done in partnership with Metro, the city of Portland. TriMet now has adopted those standards, Multnomah County. And I will say we're always looking for for other jurisdictions to join in that effort. And then, and as you all have heard today, as a part of the air quality ordinance that was passed quite a few years ago, the wood stove exchange program was started, and that's really the mitigation strategy. And the ordinance is the curtailment strategy, right? And so really this program is looking to reduce the source that we worked with the DEQ to identify as the primary cause of wintertime wood smoke pollution in our county. And so that's kind of the package. There are, I think, moving forward are a couple policy options that we can consider as an update to the air quality ordinance. And then as Tim and Shannon are here to talk with you today, the consideration of continuing this program is another strategy to make sure that we are to maintain our attainment and to continue to reduce those levels.
Thank you for that summary. If I might, though, Commissioner Willie, I think the heart of your question is, through the summary, it's reminding us that all of the things that we can control, for example, through our own construction standards for Washington County built projects, plus all of our voluntary programs like the wood stove exchange, are leading to results given the current standard. But I think your question was really going at the heart of, well, we have a new standard coming at us, and we can already see how all of the things we can directly control, plus our voluntary programs, help, but don't get us far enough.
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
so, okay, great. So
And remembering that when we started this program, the stick that I referred to was basically some prohibition on economic development projects. So,
transportation funding.
right, and so now here we look at this and again, if I'm remembering things correctly, we were allowed like one violation per year or three over a period of so many years. We're hovering on that with the new and improved standards. We go to the 25. We're in violation of that, obviously 3, 5, and 2 over the last 3 years. So I guess I'm a little concerned about the new standard and what are we going to be doing? Although, I mean, I think we're certainly trending in the right direction. We're doing everything we possibly can. So maybe that's not a fair question at this point.
Commissioner
But-
Willie, if I could
yeah.
just respond to that, I would suggest as a next step, since this presentation was just starting that discussion and really focusing on wood stove, that staff could come back and talk about the new standard. What do we have currently in place and maybe options for policy consideration at a future board meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I didn't mean to get too
No,
deep.
it's a
into
good
this, so,
question.
Yeah. And so then the only other question is, what if someone comes to you and says, I don't have a wood stove, but I use a fireplace for my heat. I burn my fireplace every day, but I'd like to put a wood stove in my fireplace. Can we do that?
We don't do that. If it is a fireplace and we can prove that they're using it for heat, which is rare. But if that's the case,
It's a pretty bad source of.
it's a pretty,
of
it's a
heat.
heavy source of pollutants and gases. We will allow an exchange to a gas or electric device,
Hmm.
but not a wood stove.
Uh,
And most of those choose a ductless heat pump. Most of those are electrically heated homes, baseboard resistance heat, wall cadets, very expensive to operate. I've seen bills in the $600, $700, $800 range for 1 month on an electric resistance home, including one home with an electric furnace that was $1,500 in a December month. Those folks want to change to something that's much more efficient. So the ductless heat pump is pretty much the way to go. And there's significant rebates from Forest Grove Light and Power and the Energy Trust and PGE for those. And now there's even part of that 30% federal tax credit is for ductless heat pumps going forward. So I think we'll see even more of those.
And our test area is basically everything west of Sylvan. Is that correct? Because that's our Bowl Valley kind of thing. Is that?
The DEQ has about 6 monitors now in Washington County, but the main one that the US EPA pays attention to is Harefield.
I thought they'd moved that one actually, but evidently not.
There's a lot of equipment there, so I think that's gonna stay. for a while.
Okay.
I have 2 points as well. One, I would hope, Marnie, I've already done this. Her name will be forgotten maybe around this table, but Nina DiCassini from DEQ just retiring, and I've already said my thank you to her. But the genesis of all this was her coming to me and asking what we would do in the area of containment, because there were 2 sites. One was Hare, one was on the eastern side of the county. Both of them in the worst possible positions to measure this. We know that. And they were going above the attainment. And Catherine was absolutely right. It had to do with the building of roads, but it also had to do with all of our economic development. And so with these new standards, Jerry, you asked the really central question, and that is that I mentioned last night there was a governor's debate at WA, but there are others, and they're all talking about Hillsborough being a wonderful place to develop more fabs. You aren't going to build another fab if we get above the new attainment. It just won't happen.
Right.
And so I'm not sure what all that means in terms of how we measure things and how we get into attainment. I mean, we're doing the best we can, but when you measure things at Harefield, with all due respect, Jerry, it's not a great site. It's gonna get high readings, it just does. And so, this is the, really spiraling problem for Washington County. If we think we have problems now, say that we can't build another facility.
That's a
I'm
possible.
gonna ask what we're all doing about it. And I think we're doing what we can. I think that we have adopted a lot of new measures. But it is a great question. It's one not for today, but I'm hoping, Marty, if you would send something to Nina, just, she saved our bacon big time back in the day.
Marnie, you need to come to the mic.
Right, thank you. Commissioner Rogers, I have, Nina and I have connected and I have reminded her and thanked her for bringing this to you and to the board and supporting us as we developed strategies to address this problem. So I think she's actually gone now.
Yeah, it might have been about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I sent
yeah.
her. She said, we'll get together again someday. Who knows? But
So commissioners, if we could
Right.
get back to the main topic. Ms. Angie has already articulated that from this discussion, a solid next step would be for staff to come back to the board with options moving forward. So I would say just from the head nods that we have around the table, that is something we do want to get on with. Are there any burning questions though?
No
No
pun.
pun intended.
Mhm.
Oh, right.
Burn.
Well, are there any hot questions that you have
These smoldering embers.
before we move on to the next topic?
Nothing we need to barbecue right now.
No, brother. Good.
Good job, Commissioner Fye.
If I could just add to what staff will come back with as a financial strategy for continuation of the wood stove program. The team is currently working in conjunction with CFO Greg Munn on that.
So what I'm interested in is as this presentation highlighted, gain share was the key funding source. I'm not interested in just a presentation on earmark a portion of future gain share here, and here. I'm looking for a comprehensive view of gain share use as well. So while I'm in support of making sure that we have healthy air, I want to make sure that from our financial strategy standpoint, that we're looking at things holistically for the agency as well.
I would add one thing, and I don't know if anybody else, wood program has been a great program. But there is a huge legislative issue here that's well outside the purview of this room. We need to understand, I think Jerry, you're bringing that up, the economic development, this is a major issue. And so I'd just be interesting to hear from,
Commissioner Rogers, you may need to pull the mic
thank you very much.
closer.
I think it's a huge issue. Maybe we need to talk with our government relations people and then really understand what all this means before we have all of our major businesses coming in and saying, you can't grant a permit, why? And, where else do we look? How do you assist us? And so there's a big issue, and Jerry, you've got your thumb right on it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
I think staff, Ms. Angie, do you have what you need for today?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, team. Keep up the good work. Okay, our next topic is still related to things like air and water. It's our climate action resolution as requested by Commissioners Pam Treese and Nafisa Hyde.
My notes say good afternoon, but I know it's not good afternoon.
Do we grab the,
Hallelujah for that.
we
Gonna
could just
say-
say second slide or next slide? Thank you.
So I'm really pleased to be here with you and with Commissioner Fye to bring forward this resolution on climate. We'll have a presentation that will orient you before the discussion on the draft proposed resolution that is included in your packet. So slide 2, please. You mean 3?
Next slide. Just say
Thank
next
you,
slide.
there we go.
Just, thank you. Yeah. And this is me. Hello, everyone. We're trying to tag team. Well, we thank you, Kevin, for your assistance here. So the purpose of this resolution is this climate resolution seeks to acknowledge and confirm the actions the county has already taken, including working towards the creation of a community advisory group. It also admirably demonstrates the commitment of the Washington County Board of Commissioners to climate action work. Next slide, Kevin. Oh, one more.
Over to Tanya.
I was asked to provide a bit of background of where we've been in Washington County. So for more than a decade, Washington County has been actively working to reduce our footprint and improve the overall sustainability of county operations. And this is through our sustainability, currently our sustainability office led by Robin Strawn. That resolution in order is 09-93. Next slide, please. In August of 2021, your board held a roundtable that was a joint roundtable with Washington County and CWS talking about our climate and sustainability work as an organization. One of the key one of the key takeaways from that is, while our sustainability division has worked on sustainability and operations, we have vast work that is actually occurring across the county in a decentralized, or you could call it a piecemeal fashion. One of those efforts was just highlighted today in the Wood Stove Exchange Program, which is a direct reflection of our climate conditions. Next slide.
Tanya, if you could go back and add, the community has been knocking Washington County's door for a while, for many years. And I think after our August 2021 presentation, this exact slide that Tanya went into details, the community sort of mobilized themselves and really reached out to the commissioners. And I want to extend my gratitude to Sunrise Beaverton, the keepers, tree keepers of Washington County, 350 organization, and many others that really just said, meet with us. We have this is a problem that's really close to us, and we think that this is just go on this journey with us to sort of address this problem. So we've had since August and until the next slide that Tanya is going to review, we've had about 8 or so meetings with that group, including all 4 of you and myself, to sort of talk about some of the solutions that is in this resolution. So I wanted to just acknowledge the community and the journey it took and how we co-created with the community this resolution and this problem solving, and just appreciate Washington County listening to the community and hearing and finally having this dialogue today.
So then we moved to April 19th. On April 19th, county staff presented a framework for a new operational climate and sustainability strategic plan. What your board directed staff to do is really think bigger, think about climate action planning, and directed staff to come back with an approach. Next slide, please. So then we go to July 12th, 2022. County staff came back before your board, including just an overview of what would it take to develop a comprehensive climate action plan to be co-created with community and an advisory group. At that time, your board had directed staff to continue that information and dive a little more deeper into the details and scope options for the development of a community and operational climate action planning process. I do want to note that this follow-up is scheduled for your board to hear on November 29th, 2022 of this year. And that concludes just my background of giving just where we've been as a board discussion and staff.
Tanya, thank you very much for providing that context. I think it's really important to frame this as we move forward. And I certainly concur with Commissioner Fai on thanking the community. And I also want to thank our staff for the work that they've done in both the staff that supports Commissioner Fai and myself, as well as our sustainability group for the work that they put into this. So I want to say that. And one more time, I'd like to revisit the purpose of the resolution, and this climate resolution seeks to acknowledge and confirm the actions the county has already taken, including working toward the creation of a community advisory group. It's also outwardly demonstrates the commitment of the Washington County Board of Commissioners to climate action work. So thank you. And over to Commissioner Fai. We're at
Yeah, I think
questions.
next is just to sort of have a dialogue and any questions, thoughts, reactions, word changes.
We did not plan on reading the resolution in this
In this work session.
meeting, but we can if you would like.
And just note that the resolution in our packet is different than what was emailed to us last week. So Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Willie, and myself, it's on us. Who wants to go first of the three of us?
Well, as Pam, as you explained, I mean, there's nothing there that would strike me as being odd or out of place. Frankly, I don't know in the second bullet where it says, whereas the board endeavors to be globally centered advocates of the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. I don't know what those are. So I guess I have to educate myself. And I don't know how obtainable they are and what that means. So there's things in the resolution that I guess I don't have the expertise on without doing a deeper dive. So that's the only comments I have at this point. I don't know how I don't have any objection to what you're saying personally.
Thank you. May I take this?
Yes, I think this
Yeah.
came from your term.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner Rogers. And what I'd like to say, we've had exposure to the SDGs or the sustainability development goals that are used at the United Nations through Clean Water Services. You may remember the little pin, the round pin that we were all given with the 17 goals. And it was also a clear and present piece of the work that we did was presented to us in Copenhagen. So I wanted to reference that in bringing the kind of international piece of looking at sustainability goals. Not all of those goals are pertinent to this climate resolution, but I did want to tie it back to that piece. And Clean Water Services, you may remember that Mark always wears his pin.
I remember all that, but maybe I need to get those back again.
Sure,
on
and
top
I'd
of my
love to
mind.
provide you with that information. We can do that right away.
Okay.
Commissioner Willie.
Oh, there he is. Look at this.
There. See,
Commissioner Willie, thank you very much. There is the seven.
Johnny on the spot. Right there,
Yes.
see? I get some brownie points or something for that. So Tanya, tell me what is this resolution going to do to our current sustainability program?
You want her to present the November 29th, 2022 presentation here on October
I'd
11th?
like to put her on the spot a little
What
bit.
a
in
time
advance.
machine.
Well, we're passing this resolution and then we're getting the information afterwards. And so I like to go eyes wide open on this. I'm not opposed to
I'm
this
right there with
resolution.
you,
I just,
Commissioner Willie.
I don't-
I'm right there with you.
I don't, I just like to know resolutions have impact
Yep.
and, I want to know what that is.
So I am not prepared to speak to what the impact operationally and financially would be depending on the scope of the climate action plan. And I'm just saying that because staff are currently working on those options, and then that also results in board direction. From my review of this resolution, that doesn't commit us to that work. already based on board direction, our sustainability team has really been inwardly focused on county operations. So the CAO office has been working closely with Robin Strong and team, and they're excited to look at what is that balanced approach of internally focused on Washington County operations, because we know that leads to climate action and improving our current conditions, as well as community facing work. So those conversations and that shift with staff have already occurred over the last 6 months.
I guess my question is why would we do this without that? I mean, are we getting cart before the horse here a little bit? Shouldn't we be having that presentation in November and then adopt this resolution?
So I would actually respectively ask that that question maybe be directed to Commissioner Treese or Commissioner Fye, because this is a resolution that's really brought forward by the two of them.
I have the exact same question.
Okay. So could we wait? Would that be
Of
okay?
course, we could wait, but your question is, why do they want us to do it before that?
Mhm.
I think going back to history, so we've, August, the conversation happened. And then July, July 12th, the presentation that the staff did, we were supposed to come to that meeting with a resolution to sort of align ourselves to say this is, and then I think at in that process, what happened is we postponed bringing the resolution forward and had that conversation on July 12th. But ideally, we would have had both and had the resolution sort of solidify and sort of gave the permission for the staff to do this work. So I think, so that's the timing of it is, and now it's just really a blessing to the staff to say, you are already doing this work. The staff, I think if you go back to the purpose of it, staff are working towards everything in the resolution. It's just given the permission for the staff. So do you have anything to add, Commissioner Treese? I think you probably say it better.
No, but I think that this has been a little bit of a herky-jerky dance. And that I'll put it in those highly technical terms. What I'm pleased about today is that we're having this discussion. What I'm pleased about today is that we've got a presentation coming at the end of November. What I'm pleased about today is that the community is listening to us discuss these issues. And Commissioner Fye and I have not talked about postponing this. I'm okay if that makes this more appealing to the rest of the commissioners to make sure that the dance steps get more in alignment here. So, but like I said, I have not talked to Commissioner Fye about that. And the chair has not had, she emphasized that she supported Commissioner Willie's position, but we haven't heard from you.
True. Don't worry, I'll go. I don't want to get ahead of.
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So, I think so I have 5 points. And there are a couple of things that I could remark on as well. So the first point is, and I did go back and review the July 12th information and slides. So I don't think there was an expectation that we would pass a resolution subsequent to that, because what that presentation included was, well, now I'm getting ahead of myself. So I think the way the whereases are put, and then the be it resolves, and the board supports and affirms board direction to staff to coordinate and develop a climate action plan with metrics and regular progress reports to the board thereafter. it makes it sound like we haven't already given that direction. So that concerns me because of the purpose of the resolution is to seek to acknowledge and confirm the actions. And I don't think it's working towards that attempt. The second point that I have is that the agency's work, there's a lot of work, a lot of really hard work that is already underway and is really hard to achieve. So for example, there isn't whereas Washington County is a participant of the metro regional area or government, and therefore managing the UGB for thriving urban communities while protecting valuable farm and forest land that surrounds said communities, with 80% of Washington County acreage being rural acreage with farm and forest land uses. Also, whereas the Metro Regional Transportation Plan and Climate Smart Communities Strategic Plan require us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through our transportation, highway, roadway, bike, and ped access ways. Our staff is really busy working on those state required efforts as part of climate action that was passed and directed at the state in 2005 and subsequently in additional adjustments. And we're being held accountable to meet those. So that's my second remark. My third remark is, whoops, sorry, wrong page. My third remark is on the 7th line of, I have page 3 of the resolution. And the 7th line starts, extend to further promote the need to focus on climate resilience and reduce climate impacts beyond current facilities. So I just want to add here that after attending the World Water Congress and with our collective experience of more wildfire smoke and more heat events, I do think we need to increase our adaptation investments and actions based on our human vulnerable needs here in our community. And I was reassured after I wrote this comment down for myself when I went back over the July material that the sustainability group gave us a set of action terms. And because what I'm really questioning is this term resilience. I really like the word adaptation a lot because there's a communal response. Climate resilience, as this cheat sheet, if I can call it that, the climate action plan key terms, the ability to anticipate, prepare for, and respond to. It's like it gives you the sense that it's always out there in the future. And as I think part of my recent report out after the World Water Congress is, it's not out there in the future anymore, right? And even I, as an active participant in climate smart communities and the RTP that has had to adopt those strategies, the impacts, I had been thinking, okay, we're out there in 2030, right? Because we have measures where we're accountable in 2030 and beyond. But no, these impacts are here and now on our watch, 2020 and so forth. So that's my third comment. My fourth comment is going back to July 12th. Our team gave us a set of examples of what we would need to do. And they chose the word examples. And what it highlighted without, well, no, they were scoping out the community engagement spectrum, but we directed them to come back to us with the option of a new board and commission. But they scoped out for us for 3 different levels what staff and financial commitment we would need to make. And that was at the July 12th meeting, where we were just on the heels of adopting a budget where we had to hold on new hires in the budget. So that's where I'm not able in my position to act on this resolution until staff is able to bring us the options in November. Because we do need to make constructive commitments. So my 5th and final, and that is my 5th and final. I'm not into doing things that are performative without much of a positive payback. All of the written requests that we've gotten through constituent groups have responded to the fact that we have directed our team to develop options for us, and that will be coming to us. So what is important to me is that we put our muscle behind options subsequent to that work session versus, to me, just passing a resolution that formalizes the direction we've already given to our CAO is saying, well, in order for us to be an effective board, we have to pass resolutions in order to formalize all of our direction. And I don't think that's the case. We have given that direction, but what we need to know is how are we going to put our budget, how are we going to make budget adjustments in order to effectuate the change that we would like and really operationalize that direction. So perhaps a little more pointed than your questions, Commissioner Willie. But those are my comments.
No, and I would agree. I'd like us as a commission to wholeheartedly unanimously adopt this. So if that means we move it till after the November presentation, I think you would get that.
Mhm.
So that's what, I think that's where I hear Catherine asking, and I would agree with that.
Commissioner Rogers, thoughts?
Oh, I think it's valid. My concern back, what are these 17 things? And you reminded me, but I need to review that again. It's always budget to me and what we're going to do. It's not intent and desire. So thanks for asking. I mean, we all understand that we live in a climate that has to be clean if we're not going to solve everything. So that's not the issue. What's it going to cost? How's it going to be implemented? What's going to occur? I don't, I guess, have as many issues with your proposal in terms of what your intent is. And that's, I think it's just the definition in my mind. Those two comments that you heard, those comments from other two, are valid.
So you rather wait November or you rather move forward today?
Well, I'd rather wait. I think you have to have understanding of what you're adopting. And that's kind of what government gets in trouble a lot about, is they have good intentions, they adopt things, and then they find out what the repercussions are. So, don't shoot before you aim. I mean, yeah.
I think I'm I would say I'm disappointed to hear Chair Harrington, you think this resolution is a performative. I think this is something that was created with the community, but I think if it will satisfy and answer some of the questions that you have about the budget and definitely I do agree. I myself in support of taking out resilient and adaptation. I actually do prefer the word adaptation myself or crisis better. But yeah, I think I'm okay with, we can wait in November and come back and
So the work session is November 29th. So the resolution would come back in December, just so we get timing down.
yeah, I
We're
think,
following.
right, because right now it's scheduled October 25th to be on the regular board meeting agenda, but we will take that out.
It's not scheduled yet. The question that was asked is if the board wanted to move forward, when
Would
could
the-
this be
it would be
placed?
in
And
October.
it could be placed on October 25th.
I'd like to make a couple comments here. First of all, as I said earlier, I am pleased that we're having this discussion. That's the purpose here. I'm pleased that the five of us together are working forward. I certainly understand the issues that have been brought forward, and I'm comfortable waiting to November to make sure that we do have a total look, and it is in connection with the work that we're doing. But the message that I do want to send to the community is that this is moving forward, and that's what's important.
Yeah, I think I think the message is also that climate change and climate conversations always get pushed back. So I'm hoping that in November, we'll be on a better path to pass this resolution and give the community what they're asking. It's a commitment. It's about saying, yes, we heard you. Yes, we're doing this work, not in the background, but we're committed and we're putting our names and commitment on a paper. So I'm hoping that in November, we'll have a different conversation that, yes, it's a unanimous, yes, we're all in agreement, and that we're not pushing our commitment to the staff, but we're making as a commitment as a policymaker. So I think I'll just say, look forward to the conversation in November again.
I just seek clarification. So staff are coming back on November 29th with the follow-up on the climate action planning and scoping options. That's what is scheduled right now for the discussion. So if your board wants to bring forward a resolution for discussion, I need to have that direction because that's not scheduled on the 29th. And what I'm hearing from your board is you'd like to hear the 29th discussion and then schedule a conversation around the resolution thereafter.
I think what we'll gain out of the work session on the 29th is the more concrete path for effectuating, operationalizing the direction to implement the adaptation committee that this current resolution is just affirming.
I think we're looking for alignment.
Yeah.
Well, I think the work session will be able to take this resolution further than it currently exists. Because right now, all this resolution does is tries to affirm our direction from July 12th and put it in context, right? But we're going to know more information from our November work session about the plan moving forward to do just that.
I'm not sure I follow any of that, but so the goal is November to have the conversation and then to also have the conversation we're having today about the resolution, or are you asking direction to separate the two?
One follows the other.
Yeah, I agree.
So together.
No.
No,
after-
one follows the other.
After
The
our-
resolution would follow the work
Not the same day.
Why couldn't we have the same day? I thought that was what the postponement was about, to postpone the resolution today moving forward, to have that conversation and then revisit this conversation.
So
If I, and maybe just hearing the feedback from the board, Commissioner Fai, I think what I'm hearing from the board is a desire to hear the November 29th presentation, give direction to the staff and take that direction. And then that would need to be included within the future, within the resolution, and come back to the board to reflect that direction. That's what I'm hearing.
We won't have the information to be able to have
I
to have the
hear,
adjustments.
I hear what you're hearing too, and I'm confused why that is what we're agreeing on. Why can't we have the same conversation at the same time? I'm just a little uncomfortable with that agreement. So I'll just take myself out and say, we need to have the conversation the same time. I think the topics needs to include together. And then if we have to go back and amend the resolution to reflect, but I don't feel comfortable separating the two conversations and then be in this where we are today. That happened July 12th. The resolution conversation should have happened at the same time. We took it out the conversation from the resolution and postponed it. And we're bringing the resolution forward today, even though July 12th conversation have happened. And then we're doing the same thing again. So how can we not be in this sort of confused path again?
So we're not confused. We gave direction July 12th, asking our staff to scope out. If you go back to the slides from July 12th, you can see what the key questions were based upon the information. We asked our staff to come back to us, given our holistic approach for what it means for us to develop the climate action plans and how can we effectuate that. So we will have a firmer idea of when we'll be able to actually hire the people to do this work, and when we might be able to start said committee, which is far more concrete than what we have today. And that's what you've heard from three of us. We want to better understand those concrete details. We know what direction we've provided. Those meetings are in video, and we want to have further information from our staff. It will lead to better policy direction.
I disagree. However, I think the direction you've got direction, Tanya. I think what you outlined is where we're going.
So I'm also hearing, also in this conversation, desire to continue to amplify what the county is doing. And so staff will also work on a communication plan coming out of the November 29th work session, as far as what that board direction is, to let the community know what the next steps are.
Can I say one more thing? I clearly hear your passion, your interest, and I suspect that you're getting.
This isn't my passion. This is the community, what they've been asking for Washington County. So just to
Well,
clarify,
So you don't have a
it's-
passion for.
it's beyond my passion is what I'm saying.
I don't dispute that, but I'm saying I hear your passion, I hear what you're interested in doing. But I'm trying to understand what's the problem of gathering information to make thoughtful decisions. Instead of just simply saying, we're gonna do everything the same day, no matter what the information is, we're having a meeting that day. We may form a different idea or thought or direction. I'm just trying to understand, because I'm hearing you. I just don't understand what the concern is.
I think the concern is delay. But Tanya, you have your directions and we'll revisit this conversation again. I think the problem I have is delaying for more study, more conversations, when we're just need to be brave enough to just say, we agree with this and let's move forward and then have the next conversation. But if we need to pause and have the conversation in November, then we'll go from there.
It might be helpful if we have the conversation in November as scheduled and then schedule the resolution conversation now or soon, so that it's on the heels, so that that we've got a bookmark, so to speak.
So I will work with Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Fai on scheduling that because they're the commissioners who have brought this forward.
Rescheduling.
Rescheduling. Thank you.
Semantics.
Sounds like a plan. We haven't paused anything. All the activity continues to go. Perhaps what will be helpful is in the constituent responses. The constituent response has said that the board has directed staff to do this work in the FY 22-23 year. But we have a more precise date by which the board will be hearing from staff about options and have the opportunity to weigh in. And what I'm trying to make clear is I want to be able to weigh in on something that's more concrete. That's what I'm looking for. We may not be able to operationalize those actions until a subsequent budget year. Okay, but it will be something with more outward effect than just directing staff per our July 12th meeting, because we weren't able to act on those estimates at that time.
I just want to one more time say thank you for the discussion. Thank you for the commitment that I hear from our commission to looking at climate related issues. That's, to me, that's the number one issue here.
Yep. Keep an eye on the ball, so to speak. Thank you, Commissioner Trent. All righty. So
I think we need a break before.
Well, we're scheduled.
yes, we have a scheduled break.
I just looked at 11 and 11 here.
Yep.
Oh
Yep.
my goodness.
So we're a little bit
Yeah.
behind time. So, team, do you want to take a 15-minute full break or a 10-minute break?
10 minutes, fine.
Okay, we'll see you back here at 11:10. Thank you. Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you for hanging in there, Commissioner Williams.
I was gonna go get Pam a cup of coffee.
Oh.
And I said, don't go yet, we're starting.
Yeah. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Our next topic is Village Pod Model Report. So we'll turn it over to our expert team. Welcome.
Yeah, and actually, I will provide a brief context and intro to this. As your board may recall, Commissioner Fye had actually requested for a feasibility study, and Commissioner Fye had asked that this be put on the agenda for a brief staff presentation of said feasibility study to your board. So that's the purpose of us being here today. As the board is aware, pods, tiny homes are one aspect of our sheltering options that we are pursuing here at the county as part of our SHS funding. So this is, I would say, kind of a zeroing in of one of those housing types. So go ahead, team.
Thank you, Tanya. Not much to add there. We have with me Josh and also Jess. Is Jess online? Anyhow, hand it over to Josh.
Yeah.
Just make a few comments and then Jess may join us online.
Yeah. Well, good morning, Chair and Board. Josh Kreitz, I'm the Assistant Director for the Housing Department. So we're really happy to be here to support this conversation this morning. Over the last several months, staff have developed two separate memos, one on alternative shelters and another one on feasibility. Jess Larson, who's here with us today, is going to kind of give a high-level overview of that information. But before I turn over to her, I just want to put out there that I think staff have been tremendously successful in the last several months on trying to build up this aspect of our alternative shelter modeling with the shelter, the Pod Village opening in Hillsborough, we're really excited about. And then staff have been working extremely diligently on securing additional land and looking for other different types of opportunities. So we're really excited about that. I think for brevity's sake, I'm going to turn it over to Jess, who can give us just a high level overview.
Thank you, Josh. Good morning, board. For the record, my name is Jess Larson. I'm your Supportive Housing Services Program Manager, and I use she and her pronouns. As Josh described, I think my assignment here with you this morning is just to quickly provide an overview of the memo that is included here in your packet. And was shared previously with the board. So the request to staff was to do a specific feasibility analysis of a specific program model type, if you will. So the idea was, would it be feasible to operate two tiny home village or pod village shelter programs where there would be 20 pods in each program, designed to perhaps ideally serve veterans specifically. And so that is the proposal or the concept that staff took back, gathered additional needs analysis and data, and reviewed the PSU research that I know the board has previously received. And this memo is to outline our response to this inquiry. So essentially, yes, this model of alternative shelters is a definite value add to our shelter programming needs in Washington County. As the board knows and has approved, we have a goal to increase the capacity of to provide shelter in Washington County with 250 year-round shelter beds added to our existing system, which was about 46 before voters approved the SHS measure. And we are underway towards that goal. And this program type would be, as I said, a value add, would help us reach that goal. So that's the first step. Essentially, this program, it's a variation on sheltering, right? And we need lots of different shelter types to serve lots of different unsheltered homelessness needs. And those shelter programs are tooled to reach folks where provide different kinds of services, different kinds of shelter type models, so that we can connect people to our services system and ultimately help them get back into housing. So that is always the goal with our shelter, is that it is an emergency response, creating a transition and connection to ultimately stable housing. And the pod or the village model of sheltering offers a program type that serves folks who might not be inclined to choose the more traditional shelter programming, might not feel comfortable being in congregate settings or sleeping in bunk beds or being around so many people in a kind of community space. And it provides more privacy that helps to serve some households that might not, as I said, choose those traditional shelter types. So that was the first step. Then, of course, the next step of feasibility is around identifying available, affordable land that meets the needs to provide this kind of a shelter program. The good news is, as you'll see later in this memo, and as Josh and Comey indicated, we are already underway with a program where we have viable land for the near term. And we are actually talking to many different landlords about other potential locations for this kind of a shelter program. So there's always further vetting that's needed to be done around the cost, the permitting, the city level support, the safety, the access to transportation around any identified land. But staff takes that step as quickly as any land is identified that might be suitable for this purpose. Next, the memo reviews program size. As I mentioned earlier, the proposed model was for 20 pods in each program. And actually what we find is we want to work towards the benefit of maintaining a program that is safe and a sort of supportive environment for everyone who participates, and also is cost effective. We have to ensure 24/7 staffing. We have to provide services like a shower truck and other kind of costly investments, frankly, to make a pod program work. So we want to balance with the size of the program with the cost to launch such a program. And the ideal model we're finding is maybe closer to 30 to 40 people or 30 pods, essentially. So that was that section in the memo. And then the next is around the population type. As I mentioned, the proposal was to focus on veterans. And here, in fact, our analysis finds that veterans are the least likely of the populations we often create preferences for to actually experience unsheltered homelessness in Washington County right now. So looking at the need, we have 4% of unsheltered people experiencing homelessness who are unsheltered. 4% are veterans, whereas 45% are women, 20% are families with children, 69% are individuals, and 11% are couples without children. So looking at sort of the family type, if you will, there. And so here the staff recommendation is actually we might better serve some unmet need in Washington County sheltering system by focusing on couples and especially women, and also single individuals, because these households, we have fewer shelter types in existence right now to offer those unsheltered households in Washington County. And then part of that reason is because there are, in fact, a lot of additional federal investments that have been going into providing housing stability for veterans. And this is the success of investment, is we're actually seeing a significant decline in the rate of veteran homelessness in Washington County because of those veteran-focused investments. And then I think last is just a summary in this memo of where we are at. As the board should be fully aware, we are very close to opening a pod village temporarily on the future site of a permanent shelter here in Hillsborough. So we will be opening, I believe, next week. They will start to enroll folks. They are currently on site preparing for that shelter program. I think they are building those new pods as we speak. And folks will be moving in over the next several weeks. That will be 30 pods temporarily located here until the city breaks ground on that permanent shelter redevelopment. which is anticipated later in spring 2023. So we'll operate a temporary pod village there. And again, that'll serve 30 to 40 households. And as I mentioned, or 30, 40 individuals, 30 households. And then we are also actively talking to many other landlords who've recently come forward, learning that the county has purchased these 30 pods to start and potentially 30 more in the future. Because we aim to be able to operate kind of in perpetuity to pod village programs at all times, hopefully in, kind of spread out throughout the county, but also kind of moving them as the use of those properties change over time. So that's a complicated concept to describe. Please ask questions if that was unclear. But good work underway and more to come with the opening of this first pod village next week. And we anticipate to be bringing further updates to the board in coming months. All right, I will close there and hope that that was a helpful overview and be available for any questions.
So I think the idea was to turn it over to Commissioner Fye to lead a discussion after we kind of gave that brief overview.
Thank you. Thank you to the staff, Tanya. Thank you, Comey and Josh and Jess and Marnie, all of you this has been a really good conversation and good collaboration, even myself with the housing team. And I learned so much, and you all are working so hard to address homelessness and housing and creating space and opportunities to house people. I saw that in this journey of having conversations with you. And I just want to extend my gratitudes to you all of the work you do on behalf of Washington County residents, especially people who are using the streets as a waiting room for permanent housing. I see that and I'm just really grateful. And it looks like from the report that the pod village model is feasible, especially for Washington County. And as Jess, you mentioned, it's even being temporarily stood up in the city of Hillsborough. I'm hearing that there's a lack of space available for this model in Washington County. And I just wanted to pose this question to you all to say, what plan designation changes could we look into to widen the net so that more spaces could fit into this model?
Yeah, so I think one thing to mention is that we started a shelter siting committee back during the summer, and that's been extremely effective and extremely helpful in just getting out there, working with brokers and seeing where the space is at, who's interested in potentially selling space. And I think we start getting into those conversations depending on the jurisdiction, right? Like what's happening, in a different city. If it were here in unincorporated Washington County, we could start having those conversations with LUT. So I think it just really depends on the space and the time at this point and what's available.
And the willingness of the landowners to work with us. I mean, it's not always the case that they're willing to work with government, let alone for homelessness. But we are making progress.
Yeah, and that makes me ask you, I think, especially being grateful of all the work that you do, all of you, and how hard you're working. What can we do in this body? Myself and even the rest of my colleagues here. What can we do to support you to be successful in this endeavor?
And I'm going to jump in
Go
here.
ahead.
I think the board's continued support as we implement our SHS, IGA, LIP. I want to just underscore the great work the staff is doing, and this is being done in true collaboration in a learning environment with our city partners. Coming to the table, we meet with our city partners on a every other month basis. Okay, I remember the calendar correctly. And we can't do this work alone. So I think just remembering that is really important. Relative to land availability, that's challenging. The board saw that as we were citing CAT, which is a very different process, but it is challenging. So I think something that the board, the community can do is if there is land, if you have ideas for land, just to funnel that to staff to see if it could be feasible and to work it through that process. So those are two high level kind of things the board could do.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Our partnerships with the cities is huge, and being able to work with them. And when they bring us ideas, when they bring us projects like Beaverton and Hillsborough, that's great. That's super helpful. And then, we're in the real estate business. So we have brokers and working through brokers and then figuring out once, there's a plot of land somewhere, what types of complications or questions might be particular to that piece of land. Then we just start working through it. But we have a good team, we have good consultants, and like I said, real estate is our game. So.
No, thank you. And I think Jess, you went over the next steps on this area of standing up a viable location and timeline, but is it realistic to say, and I look to you, Tanya, this time, progress report in 3 months? Is that realistic, or is that something that?
So I would suggest that staff could weave this in a quarterly report. The board currently receives a quarterly SHS and affordable housing. So we'll make sure to make note of this and the progress for pod, tiny home siting, as well as really being clear of what all of our siting options are in the portfolio and really having a slide or 2 slides relative to that work.
Okay, thank you. And I turn the mic to our elected chair to facilitate the rest. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions or comments?
I do.
Go ahead, Commissioner Willie.
So in looking at the information you provided here, looks like it's on bottom of the page 7. I'll read it to you because it's unexpected to flip to it. While we consider race and ethnicity of community members experiencing unsheltered homelessness, we find that 8% identify as Black, 6% as Indigenous, 15% as Latino. And then you go on to say that it's important that we provide a village model shelter is accessible and designed to serve Black, Indigenous, Latina, and other races, ethnicities who disproportionately experience homelessness. So presumably from that statistic, 71% then is white. Okay.
That's an accurate inference.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I don't, and then your paragraph goes on to say the PSU study reveals that the village model has historically disproportionately served white men, concerning a concerning result that needs attention and oversight to ensure this program outcome is not replicated in a village shelter program in Washington County. I guess that is conflictive to me. If 71% of them are white individuals, presumably not white males, but probably based on the other percentage that you said, the majority of them are white males. Why would we be concerned about a disproportionate amount serving white males when 71% of the homeless population is at least white? So I certainly want to, I guess there's 2 questions in there. One is, we're going to serve the needs of our homeless community regardless of who it is. Okay. We also have, from previous information, heard studies on why there's only 15% as Latinos, why only 6% Indigenous, 8% Black. Why are those communities not homeless? Why are those numbers so small? I mean, is really our homeless community made up of 71% white people? To me, that's a question as to why that is. But the second part is, yeah, I guess there's such a disparity in other racial groups being homeless. Is that because they take care of themselves in a family environment. I mean, we know that about the Latinx community. They certainly, their families take care of their families, and it's not to say that we don't as whites, but we don't do that as well, I don't think. So, I mean, so there was just a whole bunch of, to me, there was conflicting information in that particular part. The rest of the information is very good. So I don't want to cast some sort of shadow on that because the rest of the information is really good. I just read that and I just thought, I don't get that. That's conflicting to me.
Yeah, let me take a first kind of pass at answering that. So I think what we have seen in Washington County and the metro region and the entire state of Oregon when we look at homeless data is our communities of color have been disproportionately impacted by homelessness versus the overall total population versus how many folks are actually homeless within that population. And I think furthermore, what we've seen is a lot of it is lack of access to these programs. So folks we historically, and it's not just Washington County, it's throughout the entire state, have not penetrated and done a good enough job getting into different communities of color to let them know about these programs, how they can access these programs, how they can get into these programs. So then we're underserving communities of color. So I think some of the guiding principles that this board gave us and our community gave us in the local implementation plan was that we needed to build the program starting off with a real eagle eye towards serving communities of color. And so when we brought in, you probably hear us talk quite a bit and for good reason about our culturally specific providers, the Urban League, Vienna Star, Central Cultural, ERCO. When we talk about them being culturally specific providers, they help us. They help us with our blind spots where we haven't done a great job because they have those inroads into the communities. They can tell us, hey, this is where you're missing the mark. Here's how we can do a better job of serving communities of color. So that's really our strategy is to help have those organizations and then the rest of our organizations teach them and, bring in technical assistance to help them become more culturally competent and do a better job of getting out to those communities. So, it's not the fact that are we trying to overserve this population? Well, we've been underserved for so many years. So I think it's been a lack of access, and now we're trying to make up for that here in Washington County. Our partners in Multnomah and Clackamas County are doing that, and I know the state's putting a lot of effort into that as well.
Yeah, I think probably what my concern would be if this would to be happen is that we would have some of these sheltering opportunities be vacant because we don't have enough of the, I'll say, communities of color homeless available. So, but we don't want to overload it. So we don't want to make it 70% white and 30% other. So we leave some vacancies out there hoping to attract some of the other minority groups. And I read that in there. I thought, wow, if this is a concern, I don't understand. We're trying to house homelessness and we're trying not to be discriminatory in any fashion. And I would agree. And we need to be out into these communities, making sure they're aware of all the services we can provide.
Yeah, and I would say, those things are absolutely not mutually exclusive, right? I think if you look at the rates of how we're ensuring our shelter beds are full. We will keep them 100% full, but I think that's through the partnerships that we're building with these different culturally specific agencies because they're amazing. They're doing great work and they're helping us improve. We're not where we need to be yet, but we're getting better every single week, every single month. So I think, we can accomplish both of those goals. We can continue to do a better job of serving our communities of color, which have, again, disproportionately been affected by homelessness in our county and our community and our state, and also keep all of our programs full and ensure that we're utilizing all the available shelter space.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Willie, we can tie that question also to our next quarterly update. For your board, I was going to say vacancy in shelter, that's not our issue. It's developing sheltering here at Washington County to meet the demand from our community members. That's the challenge right now. And so we will certainly report back because I do hear the vacancy question. Staff do not see that as a concern on the anywhere near horizon.
There's way more needs than there's capacity. And I think Josh mentioned it very well. a lack of access for people of color is the issue because many of them get frustrated and they don't even bother, or sometimes they face discrimination when they get to the access points. So part of what we did was to fund these culturally specific organizations with capacity building money early on. And the hope is that they can increase access.
Thank you, Comey, for bringing to life. Commissioner Willie had us focus on the two paragraphs below the paragraph where Commissioner Willie focused us. Covered what you just further amplified and brought to life verbally. So
I agree.
thank you.
Thank you for that response, certainly clarification. So thank you.
I'd also like to add that this is, I'm pleased to see this is how our equity lens works. This is how all of this work comes together. So thank you for those explanations.
Any other commissioner questions?
Just a couple of comments real quick. One, I really don't have any concerns about this housing mode. It's effective and it works, and so that's fine. At some point, maybe I'd like to meet with the two of you and understand better how you go from multi-million-dollar projects, huge projects, and then work on the small ones in terms of the more wraparound services that you do. And it's just an intellectual curiosity of me. I mean, it's you're dealing with complex financing arrangements, and now you're working with some completely different mode, and maybe you have the capacity in it. But anyway, that nobody else might be.
Teamwork.
Yeah. I just curious how you do it.
Yeah.
Can I just respond? We have a great team and really building out the housing department to reflect not only our historical and affordable housing portfolio, the new affordable housing bond dollars that have come into the county, but then ramping up SHS. And so a question I recently got is, Comey's in this meeting, but Josh isn't, and Josh is in this meeting, Comey's not. So they are a well-teamed approach, and sometimes it's divide and conquer. But I want to assure you that they are working in a coordinated effort to ensure service delivery to our community. So, and that's just two of them. Jess is on the screen, and there's many more that are standing alongside in that department to make this work.
If I could ask a few detailed questions. Through these memos, you let us know that the Hillsborough temporary pod installation will use the Conestoga huts. And what I just can't recall is if those will be for, what's the term? Like multiple people congregate, or if they will be for individuals. There are lots of different pictures of different things, and I did not follow the link that you had in the memo. So I'm just wondering for the temporary installation and using it out into the future, how many people will be housed in one of these huts?
I'll turn it over to Jess to kind of answer on that one.
Thank you, Chair. The huts are designed to house one or two people, so an individual or a couple. So that's why we estimate that the temporary pod shelter at the Hillsborough site will have 30 pods and serve between 30 and 40 individuals.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Then another question that I have is, you've done a really good job over the course of time of helping me understand the continuum. And so through a recent conversation with Commissioner Fye, I was reminded that in that continuum, there can often be multiple on-ramps for people to get to stable housing. And I just want to confirm that I have the model right. So we have some folks who are living in cars, RVs, camping in different places. There are some folks who are are utilizing the year-round shelter beds. And you were talking earlier about how the need is greater than the supply. So there are the year-round shelter beds. Will pod villages be another solution set on ramp towards getting people? I know I'm doing all my, if I had a whiteboard, I'd be painting a picture. So I'm doing it visually. So there's having these pod villages is another on ramp to getting towards permanent affordable housing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the simple answer is yes. All of our sheltering interventions, we consider them hopefully short and on the path to permanent housing. And again, I always want to say this whenever I have a chance to be in front of your board. We've already permanently housed 450 individuals. It's probably more since I haven't looked at the data in a couple of weeks. So those are people, again, with their own apartments, with their own leases, who have been permanently housed. So these are conduits into that permanent housing.
400?
Over 450 at last check, yeah.
In just what time frame?
Since the program started.
A couple of years ago?
Well, we started, I think Jess actually placing folks in August or September of last year. Am I right? With the
August 2021. 450 people have been placed
Permanent housing, yeah.
into permanent housing. That is a result that I don't sing enough on your behalf. Okay. So thank you. You know, as I sit on the SHS Oversight Committee and the Tri-County Planning Body and then meet with more folks, hearing your results and is a reminder to keep singing these, because we keep hearing that we need to tell our story better. We need to make sure that our voters know that the approval of these funds that they have provided are in fact showing results. So fantastic work. My last question is, one of the large encampments here in Washington County is at Beaverton Creek, just off of Baseline Road and thank you, 197th. I'm wondering, I do realize that the Hillsborough property will eventually have a congregate shelter and permanent and a more permanent pod village. So this is working towards the temporary one with 30 shelters. I'm wondering, given the need, will there be is there an opportunity there to ensure that at least some number of pod units are available to try and get more of the encampment folks at that particular site into a pod and off of that right of way around a creek?
Yeah, we get this question quite a bit. I'm going to pass it over to Jess to kind of respond to this.
Thank you, Chair. This is a good question. So we have an outreach system now in place, and that outreach system has teams of 2 designated to a specific area in the county, and that covers all of the county. And so wherever any encampment is, that every encampment we have in the county has an assigned outreach team designated to go check in with folks, be continually engaging them and working with them towards housing stability. And as you were describing, that path to housing stability has many roads, right? Depending on where folks are at and what they're willing and wanting to receive in services. So we're working with folks to go right from an encampment right into housing. We can help them get into a shelter program in the meantime. And there are other kinds of interventions and opportunities. So those outreach teams right now are actively signing people up for our expanded shelter capacity coming online with this pod village in Hillsborough, but also an additional 150 winter shelter beds that will be opening, I believe, November 1st. And so there is a list that those outreach providers coordinate and are constantly checking in with folks and helping them get ready to moving into shelter as soon as that capacity comes available. And for those who don't necessarily take that path, continuing to work with them on planning for housing. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like it's possible. What I'm trying to head off is that we on the board hear from constituents, and Commissioner Fye, more than any of us, I think, hear feedback from the adjoining neighborhoods, whether it's the folks in the apartments, in the condos across the street, or in the single family neighborhoods and multifamily detached or attached housing in that area. And what I'd like to be able to assure those neighborhood occupants is that we are seeing folks who have been encamped there moving to permanent supportive housing. But I'm not hearing that yet. And I want to make sure that we don't, to the extent that we can control it, that those neighborhood members aren't seeing us, trumpeting media releases about how this new pod village has opened, only to not see that occupants are picking up the various solutions that are available to them. So I know through your outreach work that you're doing everything you can to encourage folks. I haven't been out there with you, so I think what I'm coming to is a slightly different question. Are the encampment folks hearing that surrounding community members have lost patience and so it's not just that people have a choice if they want to move out of the encampment, but that people in the neighborhood are really tired of having just illegal campers burning fires, creating trash, taking advantage of their water systems, things like that. That's all.
Yeah, I can tell you, and that is why it's so vitally important to build up and have these outreach teams. To answer your question specifically, yeah, our outreach teams are letting them know, and our EMP program are letting them know that, the neighbors are really concerned. Like, that's why we're doing the cleanups. That's why we're out there, like with the sheriff's department, if there's criminal issues and things like that, they're well aware that the neighborhood is kind of at that point. And that's why our outreach teams, the training that we're doing and the work that we're doing with them is really, it's a grind. I just cannot state that enough. It is an absolute grind because you have to get out there with folks who have been houseless for years. And there's so many different various reasons why they're out there. And so it's, if I could tell you, it's as simple as I have 10 beds over here. I had 10 folks over here and we could move them over there and they would accept it. And that would be great. It's just not that simple, right? And we all know that. But it's that grind of saying, what's going on? Will you at least come in and talk to, you haven't talked to your behavioral health a doc or nurse in 2 years. Can we get you in here? Can we get you stabilized? Is there a different med? You know, you've been on different substances for a while. Is there a way we can get you into a substance use? And it's that grind. And sometimes you have to bring down so many different barriers before you can convince people to come inside. And I've been doing this for a while, and I can't tell you how many folks who I could have just given housing to with fully furnished, and they told me absolutely not, in terms I wouldn't use in a board meeting. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and we'll continue to grind, but we got the right team. I think we have the right training that's going on, and we're going to continue to push, because that's, I think the community members, that's what they want to see. They want to see unsheltered homelessness dissipate and disappear.
Yep. Thank you. I really appreciate your patience with my different questions from time to time. I know you're doing awesome work, and how wearing it is. I feel really terrific about the tools that you've asked us to ensure and invest into your toolbox, and the diligence, patience, commitment by which the whole team executes on each and every day. So thank you so very much for this incredible work. And Commissioner Fye, you had asked for a feasibility report and for us to have this work session. So I assume that this has met your needs.
Certainly. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Tina.
Thank you, commissioners.
Job well done. Okay, so that brings us to our slate of topics for now, before our lunch break. We do have for our next topic, the TriMet Forward Together concept and outside speaker. And then we have the Public Transportation Improvement Plan priorities. So we'll break for lunch now and pick back up at 1 p.m., right?
Yes, correct, Chair Harrington. And I do want to note on the agenda, we were estimating 30 minutes for the 1 o'clock item on TriMet. I think it's probably going to be closer to 45. So I just wanted to let the board know from timing. And as you know, any transportation discussion this afternoon lends itself to much board discussion. So that's our aim for both 45 minutes.
Thank you very much. We'll see you back at 1 o'clock then. Thank you.